is that like we're in need of a revolution of some form, but that you don't think we're capable, perhaps, or even if we did do it, that most of us aren't. We're too soft and we couldn't survive like what that would do, because I see a lot of people advocating for like the revolution to come. And most of the time I'm like, look, people, you have no idea what that's going to be like. Because what happens when everything breaks down is this, like, there's chaos, there's death, there's violence, there's there's war. Like when you talk about like tearing down the system, you have to know that madness is going to come next. It's like when you tear down the order of things, like the chaos is there, like, and that's what you then have to like, start again from scratch. And that leads to a lot of death, a lot of poverty, a lot of just unfortunate things. So it's interesting to say that you think we couldn't handle it, because I think you're probably right. But do you think, so you say you think we're too far gone, like is there hope? Like, do you think that there's you not think there's like ways we can figure out how to improve things? Because like, to me, we aren't on like a long arc of history of everything getting constantly better, right? What we're on is we're just in a constant fight for making things a little bit better. And when we forget that, and like when Francis Fukuyama said, "Oh, end of history," it's like, it's almost like a resignation. It's like, well, this is as good as it's going to get. And then we start to like lose that sense that we fought for things. And we have to continue to fight to make the system better as such. And do you think there's a chance that we can, I don't know, arrange ourselves in a way that allows us to like sit down and be like, right, okay, guys, we've got some good stuff here. We've got rid of loads of poverty. We've got, we've eliminated a lot of violence. Like where we've got to from 2,000 years ago is pretty good. But like we can do things better. We've allowed things to degrade. We've allowed like the system and a lot of our institutions to become corrupted and rotten and just sort of completely no longer fulfilling the function that they were created to do, essentially, or at least in principle. I have this weird hope that we can do like what would be the equivalent of like a constitutional convention. I call it the big review of Britain.
Okay.
And that I still hope that we could sit enough smart, passionate people down from all corners of society and be like, right, okay, guys, let's do it. Because there are examples in history where people have organized themselves like that. They haven't always gone well, but sometimes they've done some good stuff. Like for example, post-apartheid South Africa is not a fantastic example, but like they
there's a good example. In 1930s Spain, in Catalonia, anarcho-communists took over a region effectively, and it was working really well until the British and the Spanish fascists got involved and booted them out because it was working too well. So there are, you're correct, there are small pockets throughout history of where things like this have happened.
So like, do you think that we're capable of that? Like, is that something we can get to?
My head tells me no. My heart tells me I'd like to think so. There was a very interesting project that Naomi Klein was involved in a few years ago. They had
the sort of thing I mean.
Oh, yeah, okay. So you know what I'm going to say. If you don't know at home, basically Naomi Klein and a load of the sort of more progressive thinkers of the world locked themselves in a room for about 3 days or something to try and thrash out exactly what to do about the mess we're in. And the basic principle that came out was one that I do agree with. If we are going to change it, it's the only way it's probably going to happen, is that you start with communities. You start back, take it right back to basics, ignore the macro issues, both economically and socially, and take it back to basics and start with change within small communities around the globe. And then it's almost like a principle of sort of how Marx outlined socialism was sort of a stepping stone to communism almost, that you plant the seed and it kind of spreads. I thought there was some merit in that because you have to. It's not the problem is we're not lacking capacity as humans. That's not what I think. I think we are more than capable of changing collectively. I think the problem is the system won't let us, and therefore by default, everyone is so caught up in the system that it's impossible to almost break the shackles of it. To break the shackles of it, you have to just stop and say no to everything, literally everything. has to be said no to. Like, for example, on the most basic level today, well, I would have walked here because I would have refused to get an Uber. I'm not going to go back home and grab something for dinner from Tesco's because they're a multi-million pound company who cooks their books year in, year out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It infests, everything is infected by the system in our lives now. And I think we have the capacity, and I think that if it was going to happen, putting my optimistic head on, it would have to start in small communities. We have to change the way we operate and look to rebuilding from the bottom up and starting any kind of movement on a community level, because we do have the capacity to understand. And most people do understand, and this is the thing. This is the frustration, I suppose. Most people know everything's fucked. People aren't stupid. They do.
Yeah.
No, you speak to it. So me and my girlfriend come from one of the poorest council estates in England. For people who don't necessarily know what this means, the country is divided into lower super output areas. These are little pockets of populations broken down by postcode where the government studies you on a population of about 1,000 to 1,500 people, and they collect data on that level. Most people don't know about it, but it is done. And so we're divided up into these little lower super output areas, which collects all sorts of information on us, and it works out how rich or poor we are, basically. There's 32,000 of these. Our estate is like in the top 4% for pensioner poverty, top 5% for child poverty, and top 10% for overall poverty out of 32,000 areas. Really, really poor. Everyone on our estate is really clued up in one way, shape or form. They know what's going on. They know the system doesn't work for them. It's divided across political lines. There's a lot of right-wing kind of thinking people on our estate. There's a lot of left-wing thinking people on our estate. There's a lot of conspiracy theorists on our estate. There's some people who don't care. People know. It's people's capacity when trying to maintain your just live from day to day that is the restriction. And that's what I said about time poverty earlier. It's a huge fact that's overlooked. There was a brilliant report from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation in 2007, which looked into the notion of time poverty and what it was and how it actually affects people. And they concluded that actually it was one of the biggest things that was holding us in this country back was the perfect storm of time poverty and financial poverty, that people do not have the time to elevate themselves out of financial poverty, therefore they're constantly stuck in both. This work was never expanded on.
It's like just you're running around.
It's just a constant cycle. These ideas were never expanded upon. You don't have time poverty studied anymore, and I think there's a trick being missed there. The point being that it's not that people don't have the thought and don't understand how bad things are. You get so consumed by just living that any chance to even consider how you would like it changed, let alone doing something to change it, goes out the window because you cannot survive. And it's reflected in the most basic things like voter turnout. There was this whole big hoo-ha about how Corbyn mobilised the working classes. I find working class term irrelevant these days, by the way. Yeah. Class structure is not what it used to be. Socioeconomic status or social grade is a far better measure of that. There's big hoo-ha about the working classes mobilised and voted for Corbyn. No, they fucking didn't. If you look at the electoral data, the turnout of what are known as social grades D and E, which is people in manual, low-skilled jobs or who rely on social security, turnout hit its lowest in 2019 ever. 53% of DE social grade people voted. That was it. Whoa. 47% didn't vote. That's over 6 million people, the poorest people, by the way, in the country, who did not vote.
Why do you think that is?
Because they see things don't change for them. They see that and it's decreased over time.
It's just apathy?
No, I don't know. It's not apathy in terms of people aren't politically engaged. They are politically engaged. They see it for what it is.
But I just mean like apathy towards whether it's like who they're going to vote for in terms of like, oh, well, they're all the same, like that kind of apathy. Yes,
okay, yeah. In those terms, yeah. It's the fact that whoever you tick the box for, it doesn't make a blind bit of difference to my circumstance. It will not take away the fact that I am tied to the DWP constantly for money. It will not take away the fact that healthcare in this country is atrocious. It will not take away the fact that I have to work God all hours to be able to put a meagre amount of food on the table. It will not change the X, Y, and Z state of my social housing, whatever. So apathy on those terms, yes. No change is sin. It's why Brexit was such a turnout, because there was a glimmer of something different for a period of time. Whether or not Brexit was right or wrong really doesn't matter. That's why the turnout was so high, because it was something different. It was an opportunity for people to actually say something and cast a vote, and it might change something. General elections don't do that. And moreover, when you drill deeper into the data, the turn away of the poorest people from the Labour Party has been happening since 2005. You started off with C2s, which...
Why do you think 2005 was the turning point where people got turned off?
I don't know. That's quite interesting. I'm not sure. Okay. Was it the Iraq War? Because...
See, that's why it doesn't feel like the sort of thing that would lead to... Maybe it was. Maybe that's like the issue that's... Because if you're talking about, would you say CD grade or C2, was it?
C2, so you've got C1 is kind of upper working class almost, if you like. C2 is skilled supervisory roles, but manual, if you like.
Okay, so we're not talking about like the exodus or like the middle class then?
No. C2 is upper working class. They started turning away in 2005. That continued in 2010. In 2015, it continued again. Meanwhile, DEs, which are the poorest people, the turn away started in 2010. In 2015, it completely evaporated from both Labour and the Tories, as we know, because the vote went to UKIP. In the 2017 election, where UKIP basically didn't stand, was it the
Brexit Party at that point?
No, it was still UKIP, but it's just Brexit was done, and Brexit Party was 2019. In 2017, DEs, the poorest people, swung back to Labour and Tories. But if you look at the swing back to the Tories was 12%. Labour only picked up, I think it was 7% of those voters. So already, and this was Corbyn's golden year, 2017, where he trounced them. He didn't, in terms of the working class.
1 point away or whatever.
Yeah. But more of the poorest people voted Tory in that election from previously voting UKIP. Corbyn still got more votes in the DEs, but the swing was to the Tories. And then in 2019, it was game over, and more of the DEs voted Tory than they did Labour. But the biggest party was the didn't come out and vote party. And as I say, it was 47% of DEs did not vote in 2019, which is around 6 million people.
That's a lot of people, man.
And this is the point. But this has been a bit of a long-ass way to come back to the point I was trying to make. But the point is, it's not that we don't have the capacity for change. Our lives are just such that we're too caught up in day-to-day drama and having to survive under the system that we don't have the capacity to be able to do anything about it and live at the same time. Our political institutions are broken. Corporations dominate every aspect of our lives, and this pincer movement of a defunct, broken democratic system coupled with an all-powerful corporatist system has ensnared most of us now, and it's almost impossible to get out of that. It's like a shark caught in the net.
Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment for us in the comments below. Let me know what you thought and if you'd like to see more of this from the show. Thank you, and we'll see you again next time.